The chamber was cloaked in stillness, its silence broken only by the faint crackle of a small fire flickering at its center. Shadows danced across the beige stone walls, moving in hypnotic rhythmic patterns as if imbued with a faint semblance of life. The space was ancient, heavy with a sense of purpose etched into every grain of the stone. Tulik stood atop a one-sided die, his figure a stark silhouette against the warm glow of the fire. His black robes flowed around him like liquid night, their edges whispering against the air with the slightest motion. The hood of his cloak obscured much of his face, but his eyes pierced through the dim light, gleaming with restless determination. The chamber's sparse furnishings spoke of a deliberate austerity. The two monuments stood as solemn sentinels on opposite sides of the room. One bore a black square, stark against the pale stone, while the other was marked by a keyhole encircling an unblinking eye, its presence unsettling and watchful. An altar nearby held several half-worked slates, their etched pictographs whispering of incomplete stories. A frayed bedroll lay in the corner, crumpled in a way that suggested long nights spent wrestling with solitude. Tulik's voice broke the stillness, steady. If one sequence can become the next, then it will be done. For my garden, my kingdom. The words hung in the air as his gaze lingered on the fire. Its light shimmered across his face, carving sharp lines into his expression. Yet the flame dimmed momentarily, reflecting his uncertainty. The etchings of tomorrow, he murmured, become the past of today. He stepped down from the die, the soft scuff of his boots against the stone sounding loud in the quiet. His movements were deliberate, as though each step carried a weight of significance. Slowly he approached the first monument, its rectangular surface bearing the inscrutable black square. Tulik extended a gloved hand, his fingers brushing against the stone. He traced invisible patterns along its surface, his voice low. This life, and everything in it, is a challenge that I will face. The chamber seemed to hold its breath, the stillness deepening as his voice grew stronger. I endure. Let it stack. I will fight. The fire flared briefly, casting sharp, jagged shadows that leapt across the walls, a brief echo of his rising resolve. I will fight, he repeated, his tone louder, a vow etched into the air. Tulik turned, his steps echoing faintly as he made his way to the second monument. The black keyhole embedded in its surface seemed to watch him, the unblinking eye an ever-present reminder of some inscrutable truth. Tulik stopped before it, his head bowing slightly, whether in reverence or defiance, even he could not say. For this, he said, his voice a quiet declaration, was and will always be my reason. The air grew colder, a chill radiating outward from the monument as though it absorbed the room's warmth. The fire dimmed again, its light flickering weakly against the encroaching cold. Tulik's breath emerged in visible puffs, misting the air as he spoke. I must carry on. Yes, the winter is here, a hibernation, but only a season. His gloved hand rested over his chest, his voice softening, becoming almost a whisper. The skills differentiate if I perceive them, he said, his tone tinged with introspection. I must delegate my purpose and flow with this sequence. Tulik stepped back, his gaze growing distant, his eyes seeing far beyond the chamber's stone walls. Now I'm here, he murmured, and that is the feeling. He exhaled sharply, his hand clenching at his side, frustration flickering across his face. Disconnection between the inner and the outer. The fire flickered erratically, mirroring his inner turmoil as he began to pace. The hem of his robe trailed behind him like a shadow, his voice growing sharper with a mix of longing and frustration. Every day could house a new creation, he said, his words carrying a faint edge, and it will, as long as there is breath in my body. His pacing stopped abruptly, his gaze lingering on the fire with sudden intensity. But how do we move past the liminal freeze, he asked, the question hanging unanswered in the cold air. Is this the cost of adventure, he continued, his voice quiet but weighted. Is that truth, that all will change, that all will leave? The flames wavered, their movements reflecting his doubt. How do I go on now that I do not have you to walk with me? The words seemed to echo through the chamber, each syllable heavy with raw emotion. Will it ever make sense, he asked, or is this insanity? Tulik's gaze hardened, his voice steadying as he drew in a deep breath. The first 100 days, he said firmly. It will be a challenge, but I can move through it. He approached the altar now, his focus narrowing to the slates resting atop it. The half-etched stones glinted faintly in the firelight, their unfinished patterns teasing the promise of stories yet to unfold. Tulik's hand hovered over a chisel lying beside the altar, his hesitation visible. I can entice the body to continue past stagnation, he said, his voice quieter now, and let the drops cascade into the world. His fingers finally closed around the chisel, lifting it with deliberate care. I can, he affirmed, his grip tightening. It can be captured. The fire steadied, its warmth spreading faintly through the chamber as if in response to his resolve. It only takes one thread to drop into the sea, Tulik said, lifting one of the half-completed slates from the altar. The intricate designs etched into its surface shimmered faintly in the dim light, waiting for completion. I have to muster the courage, the action to complete the current sequence. His voice was quieter now, almost a whisper. Lest my dreams, lest my joy, be lost in eternal damnation. With a deep breath, Tulik set the slate down and began to etch. The chisel struck stone with rhythmic sound, each deliberate motion sending faint echoes through the chamber. The fire burned steadily now, its light illuminating Tulik's focused expression as he worked. Each stroke of the chisel brought the design to life, the patterns taking form beneath his skilled hands. In the stillness of the chamber, the sound of his work became a heartbeat, a steady rhythm that filled the space with purpose. As the etched lines deepened and intertwined, Tulik's shadow stretched long and sharp against the walls, a silent witness to his unwavering determination.